who in the struggle for independence and the aftermath of same, and how they shaped the nation for all of us to begin and join and feeling safe and to be the cradle of peace along the continent of Africa. And Dr. Edu Gyamfi is joining us. He's the head of Department of the History and Political Science Department of the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. He's also a respected historian. Doc, many thanks indeed for your time, and the best of the day to you.
Thanks, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to Ghanaians in the world.
Doc, Founders Day, what does it say to you?
Yes, it leads me to a lot of definitional issues, whether we are looking at founders in the sense of the period leading up to independence and thereafter, then, or whether we are looking at the period before the push for independence, especially post-Second World War events that led to independence and the founding of the modern day Ghana. And so it leads to a lot of questions. And for me, if you look at the essence of the historiography, the writing of history, and what goes into it, then we need to look at the respective epochs, be able to appropriately define the term to know whether we are looking at a sense of a holistic history which encompasses our ancestors who existed before the 20th century, and especially before post 1945, or we are looking at after the Second World War, where young men, actors who were radical enough to also push for independence, and we came to independence on the 6th of March 1957.
Right.
However, we want to look at it. It is important for us to appreciate the fact that in writing our history as a people, we will not bequeath the founders to outsiders who were actors, but would rather bequeath it to those who are natives and play the role to ensure that we have come thus far. So if we are looking at it in a comparative history sense, in Southern Africa, you will not give the founding of the nation to the French Huguenots or the Dutch, right, or the Germans, the Africans, or you will not give the founders to the British, who right, controlled the territory before the Boers War, which led to Great Britain ceding the territories to the French Huguenots, the Dutch, and the British, largely for settler control. So here we are. We understand that if we are talking about founders, then we are talking about Africans, and for that matter, Ghanaians or individuals who hitherto existed within the territories that will be referred to largely as the Gold Coast, as defined by the Europeans, or the individual nations that exist, the Asante, the Zama, the Ever nations, the various nations that existed within the broader space that would become a nation state with the new creation of the new states post-independence, especially in the late 1950s and the 1960s. So largely, we are looking at Africans. In a Ghanaian case, when we are looking at our founders, some would want to look at it from the perspective of a founder, so that they see that in Osage for Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, who then imbibes ideals, philosophies, strength, energy from those who follow the CPP, and also the individual actors who set the tone at from the 1945, especially by the turn of 1947, when great heroes, for instance, who if you permit me, let me try to, for better want of the right word, to reflect on those actors who might have played significant role. For instance, George Grant,
J.B.
Dankwa, Aris Blay, R.A. Awono Williams, Edward Akufo-Addo. Then you look at Kwabena Kessy, William Ofori-Atta, J.W. de Graaf Johnson, and the others.
But these are all men, Doc. These are all men.
Yes, I'm coming.
There were women who played critical roles.
Yes,
and we always sideline them.
Miss Corte Papa Few.
Right.
Miss Corte Papa Few, the Mabel Duffs, and all the other women actors who stood by their men folks.
Right.
That is why I try to look at the question of historiography. Where are we looking at? Yes, we need to also look at the discontented cocoa farmers. We need to look at the civil servants or the civil service that included women who played their role. We need to look at the military that are Ghanaians who had been sent out there and fought side by side their British counterparts who showed acumen, who showed skill and tactfulness. And all the
Doc, we do know that in history, for example, oral history, as we have it, will favor the rich, the powerful, the influential, and those who are down there below the ladder will not necessarily be recognized by oral history. Is it your opinion that we have properly documented the history of Ghana such that it encompasses all these individuals that you're mentioning, the military officers who fought, the police officers at the time, the gallant men in uniform, the cocoa farmers whose monies at the time we were living on, the gold miners, the refiners? Have we put everybody around it such that the history is consummate?
I mean, we are looking at holistic history. In that sense, we will not romanticize one epoch and leave the other, right?
Right.
And we also have to appreciate the fact that you are putting across the sung and the unsung heroes and heroines. Yes, we had male, females who played roles, specific roles. But as we are trying not to obliterate all the actors, there are major actors, and we are those who were supporting actors.
Okay.
And that is why we look at the question of leadership, so that we have individual actors who acted as a result of major stakeholders or leaders who drove us towards a certain end. That notwithstanding, in historical research, what we do is that we try as much as possible as we can to do biographical sketches, to sketch, not to sketch the history of the individuals in a cursory fashion as people would do in the obituary sense. We look at the groundbreaking events and the issues, the times these individuals were on, and the role they played. So that is why we keep on writing history and rewriting history. It is also important for us to appreciate the fact that the reason why we write history is the question you just posed. There are actors either in the civil service or who served in the military, individual actors who are not named or listed anywhere. From time to time, you have historians seizing the opportunity to do biographical sketches on these individuals. That is why those who argue for Founders Day as apostrophe are saying that when we make it all encompassing, then we would appreciate the fact that those who struggled through their sweat, their blood, and toil have not been neglected. Because leaders do not just come by chance. They are shaped by their mothers, they are shaped by their parents, they are shaped by the epochs, by the times, the exigencies of the time, and the human actors who supported them to come that far.
And that brings the question in as to whether trying to rewrite history should change the original story. One would say that, well, it should rather embellish the story rather than try to take away from the story that has been known all through. And that's been a major concern about this apostrophe S apostrophe, or without apostrophe at all. What do you say?
I mean, quickly, we need not embellish history, because in historical research, you would have to corroborate evidence so that you cross-check to authenticate your source. We understand that the historian might have his own bias. For example, if you read the Ieka and the Atamawiks and the others, the historian in writing history is like having a tray, and he has, say, herring, red fish, a mad fish there, he has the opportunity to select. He goes to the market and he sees these type of fish available on the tree. He has the opportunity to select.
Okay.
In selection, he might not be able to cover all the periods. However, he must produce what will be authentic history, and it should not be that which is romanticized, right?
Right.
But that which speaks to the facts. And what is a historical fact? So the question of objectivity, the question of bias, that is why today we are having this debate and discussions. Because if we post-independence, others believe that Nkrumah became a huge figure, a personality that towered above his compatriots. And therefore, within that sense of African intellectual epiphany that arose within the 1960s, and the quest for African studies and all that, the writings and the postulations, and among other things, were situated largely around Nkrumah and his compatriots. Whereas others are saying that the Akufo-Addo's government, for instance, is also trying to, if you like, create a diminution of Nkrumah's heritage to that extent, to ensure that the heritage of the UGCC, for that matter, rises above that of Nkrumah. So we are looking at holistic history. So as a historian, there is a need to look at the balance where we make sure that we embrace all the paths and write the history according to the changing trends and times, and who did what at what time and at what period, and to what extent did it shape the human actors, including the personalities themselves who are hailed today, and to whom, if you like, to raise all the controversial questions. And so largely, what is important is that, yes, we are able to appreciate the fact that the works these individual actors have done are not obliterated to satisfy in an individual's whims or caprice, right? More so, we need not allow politicians to write our history for us. And it's very important.
Who should be writing the history?
Trying to write
Who should be writing the
history? A history that is all-encompassing. It is important to appreciate the fact that when you go into the history book, either the one written by Du Bois or the one written by any of his contemporaries, it is important, whether it's an outsider who is trying to look at an outsider-insider approach to write our history, there should be a certain trend that suggests that there is a holistic history. It is not a history that gives praise to one and try to shun the credit.
That brings me to my next question. The respected professor of history and political science and of law, Professor Aaron Michael Quay, who is also a Right Honourable Speaker of Parliament, will be addressing a forum today. He had done so previously, where people thought that he was trying to, if you like, diminish or pale the image of Dr. Nkrumah in the shadow of the key elements of the Dankwa-Busia Dombo tradition, or if you like, the UGCC. Now, that's raised a lot of controversy. How much influence, in your opinion, of his background politically has he put in trying to tell the story, one as a political scientist who knows the history, who appreciates it as well? How much influence do you think he has injected into it?
In the first instance, I would want to commend him to try to, in his effort to raise the voices of his tradition, if you like, his political tradition, and try to let the world know the history of his political tradition. But however, I think that it's sometimes quite skewed. If we want to teach the younger generation and to also write a coherent history, then it must tell the story in such that it does not create a diminution of the other. Yes, the history of this country did not start after the Second World War. Whether they want to trace their traditions to Fanti Amembu Hofeku, the Fanti Confederation, or the Aborigines Right Protection Society, among other things, the history of this country does not also take off from there. It is important that whilst we are trying to talk about whilst he tries to talk about his own political tradition, it is important for him to strike the balance, for us to tell the truth, to give praise where it is due, to approbate where it is due, Once we are able to do that, then we'll be writing proper history. When it becomes a selective kind of history, what we do is that we do not allow individuals to be able to contemplate, to ask the right questions, to be able to write history and rewrite history as we continue to look at the future of this country. However the case might be, we must say that the role of the UGCC was phenomenal.
Right.
We cannot overlook that. But we need to also appreciate the fact that, but for Nkrumah's radical tendencies, his own persona and charisma, as a result of the radical and revolutionary group that clique that existed within the UGC itself, which Nkrumah became part of, we wouldn't have come to the CPP and would not have come to independence. Largely the case is that when you look at history, several events also, if you like, trigger other events. And so it is important for us to look at the sequence and also for us to appreciate the nitty-gritty. So
at some point, Dr. Nkrumah fell out with the UGCC, where a song, for example, came up. The Nkrumah like to sing it. They say, "Dankwa Kwame Nkrumah ye odeng nyawano kafanu fi abroche na waba." You know that song, for example. He fell out with the bigger folks, the bankrollers, the Pagrants, the JB Danquest, and all of that.
Right.
Would you say that kind of, if you like, brief acrimony and that misunderstanding between them could have had an influence on our history as well, how the history story is told?
Certainly. Yes, disagreements, have formed part of epochs of human history, and it has shaped human history here and there to allow us to come to thus far. It is important for us to appreciate that the exigencies of the time would cause that. It's more of a philosophical and ideological debate. It was not a battle of the brawn, it was a battle of ideas. And largely, Nkrumah and his, if you like, contemporaries, of course, believed at the time, within the UGC itself, believed at the time that, look, we cannot wait for some commissions and wait for some participation. Remember, when you look at what was happening at the time, we are looking at radical nationalism at this time. And so that when we look at even radical nationalism, and we also credit the UGCC, we need to also credit the West African Youth League, for instance,
right,
that set the tone and was interested in self-government now, if you care to know. Apart from the work of the NCBWA, National Congress of British West Africa, and all the other youth movements that these individual actors who formed the UGC were largely at the heart of it also. It is important that the philosophical and ideological constructs, if you like, were evolving at the time. Globally, you see, after the Second World War and after the Charter and the call for human assertiveness and human rights, and all the other issues that will break forth from then on. In fact, even affecting pulpits and hermeneutics, interpretation of religious texts and all that. The 1940s and 45 onwards served as a major break in the political, economic, and the social histories of the world. And the Gold Coast, for instance, was only a microcosm in a larger macrocosm of events that were turning across the globe. So it is important that the posture of the Soviet Union, for instance, and the posture of the United States of America itself shamed Great Britain and also create a certain the soldiers who had returned from war and all that. So there were other bases, there were several bases that really created the space for some of these things. 1949 was really a pivotal period. It was a period that would turn things around. It was not only the conflict between the disagreement between Nkrumah and the UGCC actors per se, but the exigencies of the time, who create certain human actors who would want a certain kind of change that was radical than expected. Because since by the close, getting to the latter embers of the 19th century, the Gold Coasters themselves, and the early 1900s, say up to the 1920s, the Gold Coasters themselves, including their counterparts in Gambia, in Sierra Leone, and Nigeria, were looking at reforms in the area of education, reforms in the area of judiciary, to ensure that there was a separation between the judiciary and also the executive arm of government. And so there were several reforms that were sought.
Okay.
But we came to the point after 1945, we were not interested in that again. The people of the world, India had really outstaged certain things. Ireland and other countries were becoming examples of former imperial territories.
So there was a certain wind.
The Gold Coast could look at and begin to desire for trade.
There was a certain wind that was blowing across that space. Now, you are a historian. You appreciate how monuments go along with telling the stories of these histories, and actually to give the younger generation a mental picture of what the days of those times looked like. Is it also your opinion that we have properly eulogized these heroes and heroines properly in terms of effigies and statues and all of that we put up for them? Most of them are paling in the shadow of the weather. Where do we go from here?
Yes, so let me quickly commend the government's effort to try as much as possible to make sure that the teaching of history in this country gain the requisite traction. Because if we are going to build this country, then we need to look at it from that area. But yes, we need to also look at it from proper memorialization of these human actors who existed. We also have to look at it from the perspective of monuments that also tell history. In fact, if you look at the history of Africa, and you look at the sources of the writing of African history, I don't know whether you read history yourself, but you are doing well this morning. You are really quizzing me very well. I must commend you and your producers. But if you look at the writing of African history, you know that if you look at archaeological digs, for instance, you look at the study of coins, you look at ethnomusicology, you look at the early artifacts and all that. These, apart from the Arabic sources and oral tradition, these have been some of the sources we have used to write our history.
Right.
It is important that we are able to have museums and properly, if you write, if you can rightly put it across, have proper curators and also be able to store what exists in the past for us to be able to contact this both spirit, soul, and body, to be able to trigger some sense of commitment and new energies and memories for the future.
But Doc, hold on.
Statuettes,
Doc, hold that thought shortly.
Okay.
Hold that thought shortly. We have the archaeologists, we have the historians, we have the actuarial scientists. So the things you're talking about, we train people. I mean, if you go to the Legon or even your department, you are schooling a lot of people to be able to do this. What is missing? Is it the resources that are not made available to them to be able to create the things you're talking about? Or is it just a lack of unwillingness on the part of those trained as professionals who end up in the banks as bank tellers? What is the problem?
Yes, so last Friday, myself and Dr. Westcott, the former UK High Commissioner, and the Paul Boateng, Honorable Paul Boateng, the Ghanaian,
right,
who served as an MP, and some other intellectuals,
right,
we were on a discussion on a webinar that had other intellectuals joining in and MPs from the UK joining from behind the scenes. But we had these discussions and it came up. It's good for me to have a bite on this same subject again. Where do we go from here when the wealth in this society quite sometimes front buying cars, showmanship and all that, and do not understand the need to invest and inject money into research, into academia, and into building a society that is based on empiricism and data and all that. We are, if you look at the society today, it should tell you that those who even have the so-called individuals who have accumulated some bullion or wealth have severally disregard for intellectuals and for academic work and research. It is important that from time to time you find the fourth estate of the realm, like yourself, who show interest in intellectuals like us, among others. But the truth of the matter is that as a country, we need to begin to look at our institutions and see how we are interested in financing, and we academics ourselves must also be interested in looking at avenues that are really available to also support and be creative and ingenious enough to be able to look for requisite funding to fund research that will support the building of this country, either in the humanities, in the social sciences, or behavioral sciences, physical sciences, among other things.
Okay.
If you look at our history on the face value, we've had transition points in all these areas.
That's right.
Point where women will not even be allowed to go into the classroom because they should stay at the democracy and all.
Right.
To today, where you have women who are scientists, engineers, and in various echelons of society. And today, my vice chancellor is a female, and the first female, of course, to be the vice chancellor of my university.
Right.
We've had some transitions in our history. However, there is a need to look at capital injection into tertiary education and into research. And we need to look at that and look at that quickly. Because when we continue to go outside there to the Great Britain and to look at the what we call the neo-colonialists, to look for funding, they will not give it to us. More so, even when they have made it an open funding for us to compete for those funding, largely they give it to the Europeans. Even when it concerns African history, they give Europeans, Caucasians funding to come and study us. I was in Boston, one of the Marriott hotels for a conference on African studies. I joined one section on the discussions on witchcraft that is quite anthropological, and that is situated within the cosmology of Africans and globally in several earlier traditions and cultures. All the presenters were from the North America, and some of them were talking about Ghana, and the kind of discourse was actually an outsider view of our continent. I posed a lot of questions, and some of the presenters were turning red. You understand what I mean?
I do.
They were, yes. The question is that afterwards, then they asked me, "Oh, I mean, we are hoping that the next time you join our section." What am I saying? Because they get the funding, because they are supported to do that, to study Africa, And the question of witchcraft as a subject, you know what happened during the colonial period, funding shrines and all that, and all the other related.
So it boils down to funding. It boils down to funding, really. So, now, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, for example, we're wrapping up the conversation this way.
So we need to really look at the question of funding. We need to look at the question of funding. Sometimes today, anytime we want to look at funding, it is also politicized. Anytime the government will come in, I'm sure that, maybe cronies and bootlickers are likely to get the funding. When we look at even questions about scholarship for Ghanaians and Africans to go and study outside, it is sometimes cronies and bootlickers who get it. And so we need to look at post-independence Ghana and how our political actors have also behaved.
Okay.
And that is a question about our leadership.
There are two questions, but I'll put them into one for you, and briefly, because we have just about 2-3 minutes to wrap up this conversation. Number one is what we teach the youngsters in school, the books that they read. It has a bit of injection of history in them. Question, are people like you put around the table when these curriculum and the books are being compiled to be published for the use in schools? One. And number two, the history, each time we talk about it, comes to political history. But there are, for example, history of Ghana regarding our culinary skills, how asana and mada and pito and brukutu were developed, and how the children should learn it, and for those who come to research to know it. They all will come to be published. Are people like you put on the table around the decision makers when those decisions are being taken as to what should be put and published in the books?
Yes, some of our seniors have been consulted from time to time. Yes, personally, I have not been consulted anyway. But yes, you asked a right question. I'm the same gentleman. I spoke twice on the COVID-19. I'm a social historian of medicine, and you know that.
Right.
And I write extensively on health, right? And I write extensively on traditional medicine and indigenous knowledge systems and all that. And I teach that within history of medicine in Africa, a history of medicine in Asante. I teach some of these things. And there are, history of science and technology. I think that's one of my specialties and all that. It's important for us to appreciate, like what you are saying, that we teach some of these things and we teach them at the university, at the senior high school level. Yes, there are sections, but they are not deep enough. Maybe we need to tighten the loose ends in those areas. But it is important for us to look at our games like AMPE, for us to look at other Duawari and all the other things that has history, that has, if you like, that is able to stretch the imagination of the young people and also to tell them more about culture and who they are. We have become Europeanized, we have become Americanized than we've been Ghanaians. And there are a lot of questions that are coming up because we have refused to stay as Ghanaians, because we have refused to imbibe our history, we have refused to go back. The Sankofa concept must suffice and resonate in our contemporary times.
How should we celebrate today? Final question. How should we celebrate today?
We should. I think that I would want to look at the future. In the future, institutions of learning like mine and departments like mine, among other actors like the NCC and the others, should begin to come together and do public lectures and do town hall meetings to have some of these discussions and open discussions on our history. We should play our patriotic song these days. We should show patriotic movies these days and to look at reflecting on what has happened to us, why we are where we are, and what we can do with what we did and what we have now going into the future. I think that when we have that proper reflection on our history and to look at what we also need to do to build on the foundations of our forefathers, then it will be a better celebration. I'm sure you might want to end it with Abiti, end it with Apapransa, end it with something that is local, something Asanka, and I believe that it will be a better celebration.
Asanka dieye, abum dieye. Doc, I thank you very much for your time. It's always a pleasure having you, and keep safe for us so we can tap into your well of wisdom each time.
Definitely. Thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely. That's Dr. Edu Gyamfi. He is a historian. He's also the head of the History and Political Science Department of the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. And I'm saying, standing by with some of your messages.
Right. Let me read your messages on WhatsApp. This one says, good morning, Dr. Kwame. Are you Kwame? Are you Kwame?
Well, I'm not Kwame. I'm Kweku.
Kweku, okay.
Kuku,
Dr.
actually.
Kweku Johnny. I'll call him historian Johnny. He knows it all. Good morning, Dr. Kwame Johnny. You guys make my morning lovely. This is not Big Six, rather Big Three. I really like your shows. Keep it up. Sam from Joje. Good morning to you all with your nice mugs. We appreciate what TV3 and their workers do for we, the people of Ghana. Please say hi to all viewers and fans of Prince Mukadi. Halid Prince Mukadi Bramoni sent that from Tamale. Paul Morris from Ningo says, good morning, Johnny, Bella, and Etonam. You people are too much. I really love your outfits. Keep the fire burning all the time. Thank you. Musa Nima says, Founders Day is what we know, and that is what the world knows. August 4 is a date of the formation of a movement, not actualization of a mission. Birth date of an individual cannot be the day his mom conceived the pregnancy, or the day she delivers. The NDC will revert to the original date the world knows. Musa Nima, Musa, you're a historian. The Three Musketeers have made my day. I love TV3. God bless you all. Founders, shalom. We love you too. Johnny, Bella, and Etonam, you guys are talented. Love you all from Joe Boy in Sugakope. Good morning, TV3. Today, Johnny and your ladies are so splendid, so fantastic in your smogs. Ugen sends that from Wa. Good morning, TV3. TV3, you do all. I'm very honored to be a Ghanaian. I have a renewed zeal to work for Mother Ghana in my own small way as a teacher and a farmer. Makosa sent that from Lakpo Zume. Wow, today, Brother Johnny, you and your two sisters have made my holiday a happy one for me. Wishing all the NDC members happy holiday from Koto Courage in Angloga in the Volta region. Good morning, Johnny. Please, I want to know how our history was before the Big Six. It seems like it's only those times that our history as a country starts from. Peter inside Teshi. Okay. Let me not lose this one.
Don't leave me. Don't leave me.
Okay. Okay. So good morning, Johnny. Please, I want to know. Okay, I've read this one. Good morning, TV3. Thank you for inviting Dr. Samuel Gyamfi for throwing more light on this Founders Day holiday. I've really learned this morning. Thumbs up. Sir Gutfly from Kukrentumi. The very last one. A.U. Farouk from Tamale North says, good morning. In fact, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah's name will always be in our minds day and night. His recognition is beyond Ghana and no one can blacklist his name from our mind. Okay. That'll be all for your messages on WhatsApp. I'm sure we'll read a lot more.
Yeah, sure. We will read a lot